One of the things I've often said is you don't discover new territory by walking down a worn path. You got to be not afraid to venture off into the so-called unknown.
So thank you for doing this again.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to talk about like Wabash National.
Okay.
The whole process of kind of you starting that. So let's kind of go back. So you were currently at Purdue, and I read online you dropped out of Purdue.
Yep.
And then you went to work for Monon Corporation. Now, what did Monon do?
Monon basically was a repair shop, repairing semi-trailers, and most of the semi-trailers at that time were flat trailers that were used in the steel industry in northern Indiana. When I was going to Purdue, I had in mind I needed to know one thing, and that was how to figure a section modulus on a beam so that I could design a trailer efficiently. And I guess once I got that, and I was tired of tomato soup out of a thermos bottle, and so I thought, well, I'll take off for 6-8 months and make a little bit of money and then start all over again. And I still haven't gotten back. It's been 50 years, so probably won't.
So then you're with Monon, and how long were you with Monon, and what was kind of your job title during those years?
President of the division. Well, I actually started as a welder, repairing trailers, and then got into the design, and the company grew a little bit. I think in 1972, we sold out to a company called Evans Products Company. It was a New York Exchange company that primarily was lumber and building rail cars. At the same time then, about that time, a very notorious investor out of Miami, Florida, his name was Victor Posner. He was something else. And his chauffeur told him that the rail cars that Evans Products Company owned, the market value of the rail cars exceeded the market cap of the company. And so Victor jumps in and started buying up and got control interest of Evans Products. So all of a sudden, rail cars started coming back to their owners, and there wasn't enough room in the country to park all the rail cars. And so Evans found themselves in bankruptcy. And I remember telling Victor, you either sell this company to anybody that's not associated with you, and I'll stay. If you don't, I'm leaving. And Victor said, well, if you leave, I'll sue you. And so I left, and he sued me for RICO, which is racketeering. That didn't last very long. And so came to Lafayette, which was close by, and started all over again.
Or what was your kind of role when starting out? Did you write a business plan going into the very early stages of this, or did you kind of jump in, or?
Just jumped in, and I remember on April Fool's Day of 1985, we started and we had 4 people, counting my wife and 2 other guys, one a finance guy, an accountant, and the other a sales guy, and that was it. And so from there we did attract, there's no question about it. After we got up and got going, several of the people that were working at Monon decided they wanted to come down here and work with the new company. And I would say one of the best things that we ever did, though, was I wanted to start the company and operate differently. I wanted to have everybody that worked for the company feel like that they were a part of it. And so from day one, pretty well all the time until we went to public, I said 10% of the profit goes out, and we divide it up on the number of hours you work. And so every quarter I would get a projector and go out on the side of a trailer and project what our financial statements look like. and talk about our competition and talk about ideas of what we could do things better. And what really happened was all of a sudden you had hundreds of people that were pushing to do better. I still run into people every once in a while. You remember me? Boy, we had a lot of fun, didn't we? So.
And then gaining more customers, were they more going off of your seeing other companies have contracts with you, and did that lead into a lot more?
No doubt about it. They're the top carriers, and at that time, these carriers that had started up became successul, and they ended up going public, and so there was probably I can think 6 or 8 of the top 10 carriers were actually publicly held now, and that's also what gave us an advantage when we decided to go public, because the investment banking firm said, here's Wabash, and it's kind of like a consolidation of the best trucking companies in the United States, so that helped as well.
So was that mainly because you were undercutting everybody else of your competitors' prices, or was it the quality? Or?
No. I remember later on, we hired a guy out of the South that worked in sales for a competitor, and he said, I hadn't realized, he said, when we were trying to sell against you, we kept lowering the price, and we even went in below our cost. Didn't make any difference. And I said, he said, I understand now, because that wasn't the number one consideration. Number one consideration was quality, and a commitment that we would have whatever capacity they needed. And we also did it with an open book. We showed them how much money we made and what we could do to share in reducing costs and making more money. And it worked.
Either starting, if you kind of went back and did it over again, would there be anything that you would kind of tweak or change? Or
very little, although taking the company public was good news and bad news, because as a public company we could no longer do some of the things we were doing as a private company. For instance, I couldn't take our financial statements and put them on the side of a trailer and share profits with everybody in the company. Couldn't do that anymore because the stockholders, there's regulations on disclosure and all that. So to a certain extent that was, on the other hand, it was a positive because it gave us plenty of cash to continue to grow.
So going into it, did you know that you were going to have to constantly be improving and changing to win in this market?
Not only to win, but to stay the winner. Constant improvement has to, that has to be a part of it. Not only on process, but on product. And so we led with many, many different techniques. I probably have 20 patents or 30 patents on various components and suspensions or sidewalls and that sort of thing.
Is there any advice you give to people starting their own business?
Technology, which today's term technology wouldn't fit with what we had, but the technology of doing things better had an awful lot to do with our growth. And I would suggest to anybody starting over again that you really got to listen to the customer, and if you can figure out a way to provide to the customer something better than you can get anyplace else, that spells growth.